Onions are one of those vegetables that almost every gardener plants and almost every gardener secretly struggles with. You put them in the ground, you water them, you wait, and then come summer you pull up a bunch of things that look less like onions and more like something you'd find rolling around under the refrigerator. Marble-sized, soft, half-rotten before they even make it to the kitchen. And you stand there scratching your head wondering what in the world went wrong. Well, I'm going to tell you exactly what went wrong. And more importantly, I'm going to show you 5 secrets that'll have your onions practically growing themselves. Now, I want to be upfront with you right from the start. I grew bad onions for a long time. I mean, embarrassingly bad. My neighbor Michael, God bless him, he'd lean over the fence every August and look at my onion harvest laid out on the ground and say, real politely, "Those are coming along." That's neighbor speak for "those are terrible." And they were. For years I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong, because on the surface, I was doing everything right. I was planting them, watering them, giving them fertilizer, pulling the weeds around them. All the things you're supposed to do. And still, nothing. Little bitty things, barely worth peeling. And here's the thing that drove me crazy. Onions are not a complicated plant. They're not fussy like peppers. They're not dramatic like tomatoes, wilting every time a cloud passes over the sun. An onion is, at its heart, a tough, stubborn, no-nonsense little vegetable. It wants to grow. It is trying to grow. Most of the time, when it doesn't, it's because we're accidentally getting in its way, not doing too little, doing the wrong things. And once I figured that out, once somebody finally explained to me the actual reasons behind what an onion needs, everything changed. I went from marble onions to dinner plate onions, and I'm barely exaggerating. So let's get into it, because I think a few of these are going to hit you the same way they hit me. Like, why did nobody ever tell me that? Day length is everything, and you've got to pick the right type. All right, this one right here is the big one. The secret underneath all the other secrets. And I'd be willing to bet good money that this is the reason most folks are struggling with onions and don't even know it. Here's what nobody tells you when you're standing in the garden center, staring at a bin full of onion sets. Onions don't decide to form a bulb based on how warm it is, or how much water you've given them, or whether you said something encouraging to them in the morning. They decide to form a bulb based on how many hours of daylight they're getting. That's it. Day length. That is their trigger, their alarm clock. When the days hit a certain length, something clicks inside that plant, and it says, all right, time to make a bulb. Before that trigger goes off, it's just sitting there growing leaves. Now, here's where it gets important. Not all onions are looking for the same day length to flip that switch. There are 3 types: short day onions, long day onions, and intermediate onions, which some folks call day neutral. And if you plant the wrong type for where you live, that onion is going to sit in your garden all season waiting for a day length that is never coming. It'll grow beautiful green tops, tall and lush, and you'll think you're doing great. And then you'll reach down to pull it up in August and find almost nothing underneath. A little nub, because the bulbing signal never fired. Short day onions need around 10 to 12 hours of daylight to start bulbing up. They do their thing in the shorter days of late winter and spring. So they're the ones for the south, the warm climates, folks in the lower half of the country, roughly south of a line through Kansas City. If you're down there, short day varieties like Grain X or Texas Sweet are your people. Long day onions need 14 to 16 hours of daylight before they'll bulb. Those long summer days up north are exactly what they're waiting for. So if you're in the northern half of the country, the upper Midwest, the Northeast, the Pacific Northwest, you need long day varieties. Walla Walla, Copra, Patterson. Those are your names to know. And then the day neutral types sit in the middle and they'll bulb under almost any day length, which makes them a good choice if you're not sure or if you're right in the middle of the country where it can go either way. Now, here's the kicker. Walk into almost any garden center and look at what they've got. A bin of onion sets with a little handwritten sign that says onion sets. No variety name, no day length information, nothing, just onion sets. And you grab a bag and take them home and hope for the best. And that right there is a gamble, and you often lose it. So, do yourself a favor. Order from a seed catalog or a reputable online supplier. Get the right type for your latitude. Write it down. I keep a little notebook in my back pocket for stuff like this. My wife thinks it makes me look like a detective. Maybe she's right. But my onions are big now, so who's laughing? Loosen deep or stay home. Okay, so you've got the right onion type. You're already ahead of 90% of folks out there. Now let's talk about what's underneath those plants, because this is where onions live and die, and most gardens are accidentally setting them up to fail before the first seed even goes in. An onion bulb grows underground by expanding outward. It's pushing against the soil around it in every direction as it gets bigger. And if that soil is hard, compacted, heavy clay, full of rocks, or anything other than loose and soft, that bulb hits resistance and it just stops. It can only get as big as the soil around it will allow. It's like trying to inflate a balloon inside a tin can. Pressure goes up, nothing happens. Now, here's what a lot of folks do. And I did this myself for years. They scratch the surface up a little bit, break up the top 2 or 3 inches, pop the onion sets in, and call it a day. And the problem with that is, onion roots go down. They go down 8, 10, even 12 inches in good loose soil. And if you've only loosened the top couple of inches, those roots hit hard ground, they stop, and the whole plant slows down. Less root reach means less water. Less water means less bulb. So what you want is loose, crumbly, deeply worked soil. Not necessarily deep digging in the tilling sense, but you want that soil broken up and soft down 8 to 10 inches at least. Now, if you've been doing no-dig gardening, and you've got beds that have been building up with compost for a couple of years, congratulations, you might already be there. That's the beautiful thing about living soil. The worms and the fungus threads do the loosening for you down deep, better than any tiller ever could. But if you're working with new ground, or ground that's been packed down and neglected, there's a simple trick. Take a garden fork, not a spade, a fork, and push it straight down into the soil as deep as it'll go. Then just rock it back and forth gently. Don't turn the soil over, don't flip it, just crack it open. Ease some air in there. Move along the bed and repeat every 6 inches or so. You're fracturing the compaction without destroying the worm tunnels and fungus threads that are already down there doing good work. One time at the start of the season, then never again. And while you're in there, work in a real generous amount of compost. Not a light sprinkling, a proper 2 to 3 inch layer worked gently into the top part of the bed. Compost does double duty here. It feeds the soil life that feeds your onions, and it keeps the soil loose and crumbly, so those expanding bulbs never hit a wall. One more thing on this. Don't plant onions where the soil stays wet for a long time after rain. They'll rot. Raised beds are honestly ideal for onions for exactly this reason. Good drainage, loose soil, easy to manage. If I were starting from nothing and I only had one raised bed to work with, I'd fill it with onions and never look back. Feed the leaf to grow the bulb. This one trips people up because it sounds backwards at first. But stick with me, because once you understand what's actually happening inside that plant, it'll make all the sense in the world. Here's the thing about an onion. Every single layer of that bulb you slice open in the kitchen, every ring, was once a leaf up top. The bulb is just the base of the leaves, swollen up and packed with energy. So the more leaves you grow up top, the more rings you get in the bulb down below. Big, healthy, abundant top growth equals a big bulb. Every time. That's the connection. Which means your whole job in the early part of the season, from planting right through to midsummer, is to push as much leafy green growth as you possibly can. You want those tops looking lush and dark green and growing like they've got something to prove. And to do that, you need nitrogen. Nitrogen is the engine of leaf growth. It's what puts the green in green. And onions, in the early part of their life, are hungry for it. You want to be feeding them every 2 to 3 weeks with a good nitrogen-rich fertilizer. Now, I make my own compost tea, and I've talked about that before. But even a side dressing of good finished compost every few weeks does a world of good. The key is keeping that nitrogen flowing early and steady. Now here's where people go wrong. They keep feeding nitrogen all the way through the season, right up to harvest. They figure more is more. But past midsummer, when the days start getting long and the bulbing signal has fired, you need to cut the nitrogen off. Stop feeding. Because nitrogen at that point is telling the plant to keep making leaves. And the plant's trying to shift its energy down into the bulb, but you're up there hollering at it to keep growing tops. The two things are working against each other and the bulb suffers for it. So the timing is this. Feed heavily and consistently through the first half of the season. Then stop. Let the plant do what it's naturally trying to do, which is pack all that stored energy down into a big fat bulb. Don't interfere with that. Just step back. Now, there's a companion piece to the nitrogen feeding that a lot of folks don't know about, and it's sulfur. Sulfur is what gives onions their punch, their bite, that eye-watering sharpness that makes a good onion taste like something. Without enough sulfur in the soil, you grow onions that are big and beautiful and taste like a slightly onion-flavored glass of water. Disappointing doesn't even cover it. Good compost, especially compost that includes a lot of kitchen scraps and grass clippings, usually has decent sulfur in it naturally. But if your soil is on the sandy or depleted side, it's worth getting a fertilizer that includes sulfur in the mix. Your nose will thank you come harvest time. Your eyes too, actually, but in a different way. Wet early, dry late, and that second part is the one everybody skips. Watering onions feels intuitive, doesn't it? They're a plant. Plants need water. You give them water. And for most of the season, that's exactly right. Onions like steady, consistent moisture while they're building that leaf growth we just talked about. About an inch of water a week, deep and slow, right down at the soil level. Same as tomatoes. Same as most vegetables. Keep it steady, keep it even, don't let them go bone dry and then flood them. But here's the part that almost nobody does, and it makes an enormous difference in how those onions taste and how long they'll keep after harvest. You've got to dry them out at the end. About 2 to 3 weeks before you expect to harvest, you stop watering. Just stop. Cut it off. Let the soil around those onions dry out completely. Now, I know that feels wrong. It feels mean, honestly, like you're abandoning them right at the finish line. But here's what's happening when you do it. The onion, sensing that dry spell, starts pulling all the moisture out of its outer layers and toughening up the outer skin. It's paperifying itself, if that's a word. And I've decided it is. That dry, papery outer skin is what protects the onion in storage. It's what lets a good onion sit on a shelf for 6 months without going soft or moldy or growing a little green hat. If you keep watering right up to harvest, those outer skins stay soft and damp. And a soft-skinned onion doesn't store. It goes mushy within weeks. All that growing effort, all that time, and you've got a vegetable with a 3-week shelf life. Whereas the onion you properly dried off at the end will sit in a cool pantry from October right through February, March, sometimes longer. Same onion. Completely different outcome just from stopping the water at the right time. Now, here's a sign to watch for. When you cut the water off, you'll start to see the tops beginning to yellow and lean. That's normal. That's the plant saying it's done. Don't panic and water them. That yellowing and leaning is actually the signal you're looking for, and it rolls right into the next secret, so keep it in the back of your mind. One other thing about watering onions, and this one's worth mentioning. Never wet the tops. Same principle as tomatoes. Water at the base, at the soil, right at the roots. Getting the foliage wet on onions invites fungal disease in a hurry, and nothing ruins a crop faster than a good purple blotch or downy mildew rolling through the bed. Soaker hoses are ideal. A drip line is ideal. A watering can poured slow and low at the base works fine too. Just keep those tops dry. Learn to read the neck flop. And for the love of everything, don't rush the cure. All right, this is the one that ties the whole season together. And it's the one mistake that can undo all the good work you did in Secrets 1 through 4, so pay attention here. Most people harvest their onions based on one of two things. Either they look at the calendar and decide it's been long enough, or they reach down, feel a bulb, think it seems about right, and pull it up. And both of those methods will get you an onion, but they won't get you the best onion. And more importantly, they won't get you an onion that stores properly through the winter. The right signal, the one the plant is sending you if you know how to look, is what I call the neck flop. And it's exactly what it sounds like. At some point in late summer, you're going to walk out to your onion bed and notice that the green tops have started flopping over. Not wilting in a sick way, not yellowing from disease, just laying themselves down flat on the ground like they've had a long day, and they're done. When more than half of your tops have flopped over on their own, that's your harvest window. That's the plant telling you the bulb is finished, done growing, ready to come out of the ground. Now, some gardeners go out and manually push the tops over to hurry this along. You might have heard of that. And look, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I'd rather let the plant do it in its own time because a top that flops naturally is a more reliable signal than one I pushed over myself. Michael actually tried that trick one year on his onions, pushed all the tops over at once trying to speed things up, and ended up with half his crop a bit soft because they weren't quite ready yet. He didn't bring it up again, and neither did I. Most of the time. So you see the flop. More than half the tops are down. Now you pull them, right? Well, sort of. You loosen them, take a fork and ease them gently out of the ground. Don't grab them by the tops and yank. If the neck snaps, that's a problem, because a broken neck is an open door for rot during storage. Ease them out, set them aside, handle them like they're something you care about. And now comes the part that almost everybody skips over or does halfway. The cure. Curing is simply letting those onions dry out slowly in a warm, airy place before you put them away for storage. And it is not optional. It is not something you can rush. And it makes an absolutely enormous difference. Here's what curing actually does. That outer skin we talked about, the papery layer, it needs time to dry down completely and form a tight seal over the neck of the onion. That little spot at the top where the tops were attached. If you put an onion into storage with a soft, thick, undried neck, moisture sits in there and rot starts from the inside out. You won't even see it happening until you go to grab one in January and it collapses in your hand. To cure your onions properly, lay them out somewhere warm, dry, and with good air moving through. Not in the blazing sun, because that can scorch them. Shade with good airflow is ideal. A covered porch works beautifully. So does a barn, a shed with the door open, a garage with good ventilation. Spread them in a single layer so air can get all around each one. And then you leave them there for 2 to 3 weeks. 3 weeks if your summer has been particularly wet or humid. By the end of the cure, the outer skin should be papery and crinkly, like the dry onion skins you see on grocery store onions. The neck should be completely dry and thin, not thick or green or soft in any way. Run your finger along it. If it crinkles like paper, you're done. If it still feels a little soft or fleshy, give it more time. Patience here is the whole game. Once they're properly cured, clip the tops down to about an inch above the neck, or braid them if you got the long-topped varieties and you want to be fancy about it, which honestly looks real nice hanging in the kitchen and also makes you look like you know what you're doing when company comes over. Then store them in a cool, dark, dry place with a little air moving through. A mesh bag, an old nylon stocking, a slatted crate. Somewhere the air can circulate. Keep them off the floor. Keep them out of the refrigerator, which is too cold and damp, and out of a warm kitchen, which will sprout them. Stored right, a properly grown and properly cured onion from your own garden will sit in your pantry from September through February or March without batting an eye. Some of mine go longer. I pulled one out this past January that I'd grown the previous summer, and it was as tight and firm as the day I harvested it. Stood there holding it, feeling unreasonably proud of myself over an onion. But that's gardening, isn't it? These little wins feel enormous when you've been doing it wrong for years. Secret number 1. Match your onion type to your latitude. Short day varieties for the south, long day varieties for the north. Day neutral if you're in between or uncertain. Get this wrong and nothing else matters. Secret number 2. Loosen the soil deep, down 8 to 10 inches, and load it with compost. An onion bulb can only get as big as the soil around it allows. Give it room. Secret number 3. Feed nitrogen hard and consistent through the first half of the season, then cut it off. Every leaf up top is a ring in the bulb. Grow the top to grow the bottom. Secret number 4. Water steady and deep through the growing season, then stop completely 2 to 3 weeks before harvest. That dry down period is what builds the skin that keeps the onion all winter. Secret number 5. Wait for the neck flop, not the calendar. Cure for 2 to 3 full weeks in a warm, airy spot before you ever think about putting them away. The cure is not the last step, it is the most important step. That's the whole list. 5 things. Not one of them costs any money. Not one of them requires a single tool you don't already own. It's just understanding what the onion actually needs, instead of guessing at it the way most of us do for years before somebody sits us down and explains it properly. I think about all the sad little marble onions I grew before I knew any of this, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting a little. All that effort, all those seasons, for nothing much. But that's the thing about gardening. There's always another year, always another chance to do it right. And now you've got the whole picture before you've even made those mistakes, which puts you miles ahead of where I was. Go get yourself the right onion for your area. Loosen that soil down deep. Feed those tops like you mean it. Dry them off at the end and wait for the flop. Do those 5 things, and I promise you, come late summer, you'll be standing in your garden holding onions the size of softballs, wondering why you ever thought this was hard. Take care now, and I'll see you next time.